Hi everyone. So just quickly, hands up, who was here yesterday? Amazing, good stuff. So I'm Stuart Day from Dunelm. This is Chris. Today we're going to talk to you about. Let me start again. So there's a lot of discussion in the industry right now around software testing, quality engineering. What's the difference? How do organisations transition? And obviously, there's a lot that goes into that, predominantly from a people perspective. Okay, so what we're going to be talking to you today about is more around how you grow the skills, identify the skills, grow the skills that you need to help your organisations make that transition. We'll also cover off what we're doing at Dunelm, what our thoughts around quality engineering are, and how we kind of go around that and support everyone. So just very quickly, so just a little bit about us. So I'm Stuart, Head of Quality at Dunelm. Been in the industry, so quality industry within tech and software for around 24 years. I wish I was as tall as I am old, but clearly that's not an advantage of mine. Chris?
Yeah, so I'm Chris Henderson. I'm one of the principal quality engineers at Dunelm. I've been in the industry, like quality-centric roles for the past 14 years, but within tech just for the last 4. The last 18 months spent with Dunelm.
Yeah, so me and Chris have one really big thing in common, and clearly it's not our height, okay? That's why I'm standing on this side of the stage. Anybody guess what it is? Other than we work for Dunelm. No? Okay. We are both college dropouts. Yeah? So, it's funny because we were talking about this and talking about our backgrounds and our journeys and where we're both here on this stage today and the journeys we've taken have been completely different. Okay? Completely different. And Chris is going to talk to you about his journey in a minute to start moving things forward. But it got us thinking, and it kind of got us thinking more around how we approach this talk as well. But also, it leads into a lot of what we're doing at Dunelm right now to support people, their growth, their development, etc. All in line with quality engineering. So, as I mentioned, all our journeys are different. I'm sure everybody's journey in this room is different, and I'm going to get some audience participation in the first thing in the morning. I'm sure you're all really happy. I hope you've had some coffee. But what we decided to do as preparation for this talk was just ask our team of QAs at Dunelm, of which we've got around about 60 now, ever growing. What was their journey? What were their backgrounds? What was their educational paths? Did they even know about software testing or quality engineering when they were going through those educational paths? Right? Most people end up saying, "Oh, I fell into it. It just happened." So I'd like to run the same kind of quick questions with everybody in this room. And if you could just stand up and put your hand up. Stand up would be great, because it gets the blood going. What was your educational path? So could you stand up if your educational path was via a STEM degree? Okay. Sit back down. How about another degree? Excellent. What about other educational paths? I'm definitely in the other. My education is terrible. And interestingly enough, when we asked the same questions to our team, the balance was definitely between the STEM degree and other. So yes, there's people from the other degrees, but the other pathways play a huge part in our team. And then, just very quickly, so out of everybody in this room, when you were going through your education, whether it be many years ago like myself, or more recently, were you aware that even there was such career paths as software testing or quality engineering? No. Stand up if you were. Stand up if you weren't. Some people are obviously in between, and they can stand up. But that's fine. So that So surprise, surprise, the same sort of results. Okay. And then finally, we won't run on these too much, but we also asked how people eventually got into their role, whether it be at Dunelm or wider. So things like applied for an entry-level role, secondment from another part of the business, graduate scheme, fell into it. Other. So I won't get you all to go through all those, but I'm sure there's a mix of people in terms of how you actually got your roles originally anyway, right? And for us, again, it was a real mix of quite a higher proportion of people just fell into it. Okay? So looking at that, if people fall into these types of roles in our industry, how can we find those people earlier? How can we nurture those people? How can we develop those people? And actually the industry's changed massively. As I mentioned earlier, moving more towards quality engineering from software testing, and software testing is part of that, but it's not solely that. So Chris is going to talk to you about his journey, and hopefully he'll start bringing some of that to life.
Thanks, Stuart. So I think it's always important to reflect back on everybody's experiences. As you can see, everybody was standing up, and we didn't all stand up for the same question. And it's always good to look back at our previous experiences as well and see how we can bring that into our roles today. So I'll talk a little bit about my journey. So before I moved into a software testing role within tech, I spent 10 years at Nissan Motor Manufacturing Plant in Sunderland, up in the north of England, as you can probably tell by my accent.
We definitely guess.
And the slide. And obviously you can tell by that the environments are completely different to what you may know sitting at home now or like behind a desk in an office. But I'd spent some time there and I'd learned a lot of things, and I was just kind of coming towards a point in my career where I was looking for new opportunities. As you can see there, that's a 10th millionth cash guy produced, and there's only so many cars you can really look at on a daily basis what you want to change. So I started looking into other roles in the industry, but things where I could use the skills that I've built over the 10 years and transfer them across. And I started looking into software testing because I'd always had a passion for technology. And obviously I was surrounded by it within the manufacturing plant, just a little bit different with robot processes and things. So when I started investigating, there was some things that I seen that there was definitely some similarities between the two industries, because what I was looking for is to highlight them, so if I was going to make that transition, then at least I had that starting point. So at first glance, on the left-hand side there, you've got the manufacturing development life cycle, very just high level. We had it broken down into zones, and each zone had quality representation within that. And then at the end, you would have your final line inspection. And when I first started looking at diagrams of the software development cycle, this is what was presented, but I know we're now starting to evolve that process further. But with the analysis stage, design, develop, and then test at the end. So I could see the similarities. And then when I started looking at identifying the quality issues in both software testing and the manufacturing industry, they were basically exactly the same. You're looking to have a level of traceability, obviously including any kind of identification, steps to reproduce the issue, etc. They were pretty much exactly the same, so I thought I was on the right path, and I was on a bit of a winner. One of the other things I looked at was our manufacturing repair process in particular. So you would have the production main line, and all of the cars would just be one by one after another. And you had the ability, if there was ever any quality issues, instead of stopping the production line, because you wanted to maintain the production to keep going, instead of obviously having to stop it. So you could pull the cars out, and you would have quality teams who would work on them cars off the main track, and then once they were fixed, you could bring it back in. And for me, that process there is very similar to how we would see source control systems. So the diagram's exactly the same. You would typically have your code running on a main branch, and the team has the ability to branch off, work independently from the main branch, and when the work's done, then you can just merge your work back in. It's a very, very similar process when you look at it from a high level. So with these sort of things in mind, I knew I had some things that I could go into interviews with and say how my industry is comparable to software testing, but also how I can add value as well to that role. So with that, it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me, and off I went and I applied for my first software testing role at a bingo company in the northeast, but not as a bingo caller, obviously as a software tester. And I spent the first 6 months kind of just getting used to the new environment, working on new products, integrating within the teams. And what I started to notice was every time we were having a review at the end of our cycles, we were coming across the same sort of issues time and time again. And I felt like it was because there was a lot of disconnect, and we had siloed testing teams, but siloed product teams, development teams, and people weren't collaborating in the way that they were within the manufacturing process, and there was a lack of kind of ownership across the board over quality. So I started to reflect on my previous experience and see how I can look back and maybe pull some of them experiences into the software development process. And some of the main points that I looked at was within Nissan and the manufacturing process, everybody was responsible for quality, but the key there being because everybody is aware of how they could influence it. And I think that's partly to do because we had quality representatives within the teams who would coach the teams, not just do the testing, but they would coach every single person within the team on how they could improve quality themselves, either directly or indirectly through the roles that they do. And then everybody has that sense of ownership and starts playing a part in it, instead of it being solely the quality being solely relying on the testing team themselves. There was a big focus on issue prevention and early detection, where when I went into my software testing role, I found that we were tending to look at things after the software had already been developed, and it was that handoff process. And we didn't have that early exposure where we could have potentially, if we'd been involved more in the discussions, we could have identified issues before they'd even become one. We used to use data heavily. Everything was tracked within the manufacturing process, and we used to use that data to provide insights to our teams to obviously make changes and better improve the process. But the teams themselves as well were always adaptable. Just because they would work in a certain way doesn't mean they would continue to work that way for the next 12 months or the next 5 years. They were so adaptable, and things would change on a regular basis, whereas with software testing I felt some of the teams and in the software development lifecycle, product owners, business analysts, etc., were all sort of resistant to change, even though we knew that we needed to change in order to improve quality across the board as well. So looking back for me, that was just some of the things that I'd highlighted with the difference between quality engineering and testing, and how I could reflect on previous experiences and bring that back into software testing to be the quality coach within teams to help the organisation improve quality in every single aspect of everything that we do. But that leads to the question, what is quality engineering? Because that's my experience, but we all have different experiences here, and different opinions as well. But obviously, looking at testing, I see that as testing not as the job role, but it's the activity as part of quality engineering. But how do we move forward into quality engineering space and kind of away from testing as we know it? And so I'll hand off to Stuart, and he'll let you know a bit more about how we're doing quality engineering within Dunelm, what's our approach and our take on it as well.
Cheers, Chris. Sort of the things that we wanted to do and the people that we wanted with that type of mindset. And for us, first of all, obviously, quality engineering, you probably put 10 people in a room, you'll get slightly different answers, maybe slightly different perspectives. And we needed, obviously, to think about how we were approaching this at Dunelm. And for those that were at the conference in October, I talked about our culture of quality and thinking about continuous quality. Quality engineering plays a massive part in that. And we've got these three kind of pillars, if you like, that create that vision. So we needed to come up with that vision. So the first one is obviously looking at how everybody takes that responsibility on for quality within their teams, and obviously understanding how they can all contribute to that in their different roles. And I'm not just talking about the software engineers or the software testers or it's also the product owners and our delivery leads and our UX designers and so on and so on. Everybody can contribute to that in some way. The second part of that is obviously building quality and measuring it continuously. Okay, so rather than, and this comes back to the whole prevention piece that Chris was talking about, how do we prevent issues, find them early, detect, so they don't actually happen once they don't end up in the code, right? We find them late in the day. But also, how do we measure? What is the measure of quality? How do we define quality in an organisation? And I'm sure that quality is a very subjective thing, right? And so really understanding what quality means to your organisation and your customers, is really, really important. And then finally, we talk a lot about getting stuff out the door really quick, right? We need to get stuff out the door really, really quick. How can we do that? But there's no point getting stuff out the door really quick if it's not of the right level of quality for the customers that are going to receive it, because ultimately you're just putting something of very little value in their hands, right? So it's trying to find that balance between what is the right level of quality and the speed you need to go, but also the underlying ways and mechanisms to get that out the door. So things like your pipelines, your release mechanisms, the quality of those. Yeah, it's not just the software that's travelling along that journey, it's actually underpins that software as well to get it out the door. So they're the three kind of pillars, if you like, in terms of the vision. And these are some of the principles and behavioural values that we've kind of identified. And these are ever evolving, they're always being looked at and also holding ourselves accountable to, not just us as a quality team, but our wider engineering capabilities, our product communities, etc. Making sure that everybody understands how they can contribute. And these are just examples of some of the stuff that we've got. There's some reasoning behind that. So that's all very well, but how do we measure those kind of things? So insights, coming back to Chris's point about data. Data is really important. You can learn a lot from data, right? As long as that data is good data. So we use a number of different ways of measuring quality, which also then obviously leads to different skill sets, different understandings and analysis and all that kind of stuff. So we look at, well, one of the obvious things is escaped issues, how many issues crept into our production systems. But not how many issues crept into our production systems, those who are customer impacting, yeah? We focus very much on those rather, because you're always going to have issues in production. Anybody that thinks you're not, that's a tough conversation to have. But so it's those real customer impacting ones, and actually, did our monitoring pick those issues up, or did our customer pick those issues up? Right? Because if our monitoring picked it up, okay, it's not such a bad situation, because stuff will creep in because you're going at speed. But if you don't have the monitoring there and it's the customer, probably not such a good experience, right? So again, thinking about those things, system performance, we talked a lot on this stage, or the Q&A panel talked a lot on this stage yesterday evening about the digital experience and that whole piece around load times on pages and websites and people going elsewhere. It's really important, and for us at Dunelm, our Dunelm.com platform is huge for our customer base. But not just that, it's also all our colleague systems, colleague applications, our mobile POS systems in our stores. So our colleagues in stores, when they're trying to order something, If that experience is bad for them, they're a customer, but then also it's a knock on to the customer that they're trying to serve. So it's a double whammy. So we monitor those kind of things. Tech debt, massively an impacting thing. If you're building on shoddy foundations, you're going to have problems moving forward. So how do you try and prevent as much tech debt as possible, or loop back round and make sure you're addressing it as and when you need to? So monitoring and trying to measure those things. Customer feedback and behaviours, ensuring that we are building the right thing in the right way, based on our customer need, not just how we think our customer's going to use it. Again, there was talk yesterday about UAT and making sure that the customer is represented somehow in that process, right, however that may be. But just also making sure that we're testing it with the customer in mind and not just coming up with these scenarios that actually may or may not happen. Test coverage. So in terms of test coverage, not talking about number of tests we have, how many people have been in discussions around how many automation tests we've got? Anybody? Yeah? Does it add much value? No? I mean, it's not about how many you have, it's are they doing the right things? Are those tests adding value? Do they test at the right layers? Where if they're not testing the right layers, how can you get them to test at the right layers? Understanding your architecture, understanding the technology that you're testing against, etc. Trying to get fast feedback. And then I talked about pipelines and release trends and ensuring that those are high quality as well. So there's a lot that goes into it, and obviously off the back of that, there's a lot of different types of skills potentially you need to develop and ensure that people are building more knowledge and awareness around. Chris is going to start talking to you a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, obviously we've got to start and look at skill sets so we can move forward towards quality engineering. You see there we've got the three pillars, so testing and engineering, tools and automation, mindset and behavioural. I think a lot of the time we tend to focus on tools and automation and testing, but not so much diving into engineering best practices as well and bridging that gap with our engineering and development teams. We don't normally talk about the mindset and the behavioural aspects as well. So I mentioned previously about wanting to become the quality coach within the team, and in order to do that you have to have the right mindset in order to change other people's mindsets within the team so they can have awareness of how they contribute to quality. But what we're not saying is with these three pillars, you have to have every single skill within it. We're all different, and we don't want to create a cookie cutter, otherwise we create robots to do the roles forward. We want people just to have a level of awareness of some of these skills, and then when we come together as teams, that's how we end up with the coverage, and we use collaboration to obviously hit the breadth and depth of skills that we would require. So here's some examples. So you've got the quality engineer right in the middle, but you've also got other roles within your teams as well. You may be familiar with some of them, but a lot of the time we focus straight down on the skill sets that people have and the depths of them for that particular role. But I think things are starting to evolve, and many of you may have heard of T-shaped team members. But really I think we need to focus on creating T-shaped teams and not the members themselves, because as I mentioned, you're not going to find somebody who's got all of them skills, because that's the apparent unicorn in the industry, and we all know that unicorns aren't real. But what you do notice is that when we start to move towards T-shaped team members, this structure doesn't cover a lot of the bases of the other skills. It's very, very horizontal, obviously, in its approach. And it does provide a level of awareness, but I think there could be a better representation of that. And you may have noticed in the title, but I'll let Stu explain a little bit more about his vision around the T-shape and how we can evolve that for the members in our teams.
Yeah, so you'll see there, a tree-shaped team members, which is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, right? It is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. But really what I mean by that is that everybody grows in different ways. everybody potentially, if you look at the T-shaped team, it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? See, I've got one now. Yeah, it's very kind of specific in terms of, you'll have a very high level of knowledge across those other roles, but actually, you might have some knowledge across a number of different areas of a different role, right? And it's more about, as you grow as a person, as you grow your skills, you're touching on a number of those different things. It doesn't mean you'll have depth of knowledge in all those areas necessarily, but you'll gain an understanding and a level of empathy for all those other skills, all those other areas that can also add quality. So this whole concept of tree-shaped team members is just something we were throwing around, and it's kind of stuck a little bit over the last few days as we've been talking more about it. In terms of, it's not just a team, right? It's actually one person may go this way a little bit more than this way, but you develop more in your own way and you grow. I mean, you plant a tree, it doesn't grow in the same way every single time, right? It's kind of the concept behind it. So it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, a little bit playful, but who knows, it may take off. If it does, copyright here, you will hear. So that's all great. So, but we've decided on the vision. We know what the vision is. We've got a good understanding of the types of skills from the vision and the insights and the way in which we're approaching it. But we talked from the little survey we did earlier. We can see that everybody is in this room from different backgrounds, from different educational paths. How do we actually find people? How do we harness talent? It's interesting because we were sat in the bar last night, not drinking heavily, finishing off these slides, honest. And while we were sat there, reams of school kids walked in, not into the bar, into the hotel, because that would be a bit worrying. Probably room may have had a few complaints. But reams and reams and reams of school kids walked in. And it kind of got me thinking, it's like what we were talking about earlier. None of those kids, I mean, they're fairly young now. They're probably giving monkeys about X years ahead, but they'll probably never know that this is even a career, right? They may think about technology, they may look at computer science, but do we do enough in our educational systems to help people understand that this is actually a career that you can have? And we've all built careers on this, right? I mean, 24 years. Some of us, I've winged it a little bit, but 24 years is a long time. So how do we find that talent? And not just within your tech teams right now, but in your wider organisations, outside of your organisation, within the educational system, etc., etc. So we're working really hard at Dunelm at the moment on building talent pipelines. You're always going to get people leave your teams, right? What you don't want to get, and ideally you want people to leave your teams to further their career, not because they're really unhappy, right? Because if somebody comes to you and says, I'd love to leave, I want to leave because I've got a really great opportunity that's going to really further my career, based off the personal development I've already had and the foundations that have been laid, that's great, right? We've achieved something. Okay, it's a loss to your organisation, but it's better than them coming and going, I'm really pissed off, right? I really hate this job. I hate the company, I hate the culture. That's not really where you want to be. So you do need to be very aware that people are going to leave your team. So how do you then address and ensure that your talent pipelines are coming through with people from all different backgrounds that ultimately will supplement your teams and be able to provide you with the quality engineering capability, mindset, technical skills, etc. that ultimately you're going to need. Yeah. So once you've found those people, and there's different things you can do. Obviously, we're talking to schools, colleges, universities. We hold careers days. We've got graduate schemes, apprenticeships. We've also just partnered with a third party that has their own academy, and so there's different ways you can do this. But it's about being ahead of the game and ensuring that you're looking further than what you may think, which is out there recruitment in the industry right now, okay, that people have got all the experience, because some people that may have all the experience may not have the type of experience that you need, or the desire to grow, or well, they might, but open that wider, yeah? But then once you've found those people, once you've found those paths, how do you support them? How do you provide them with a learning and development journey? How do you provide them with the training and the coaching and make sure everything's in place? We all know that everybody's different. We already said that, yeah? So how do you support them? And then also then how do you provide them with the career opportunity and the career path to continue to grow them? Maybe not just within the quality space, but wider within the organisation if they choose to. That's a better way than them leaving the organisation as well. So that's all very well. Yeah, doesn't provide people with the time to learn and self-develop. You know, well, we haven't got time for people to spend half a day learning something. No, we've got stuff to get out the door. Crack on. Then you're going to be in a real challenging position, right? And to be fair, this is where we've been in Dunelm. We've talked a good game, right? But the people have fed back going, this is amazing, but I actually get no time, right? So we've, as an organisation, this is specifically within our tech space that we've done this, but this is becoming a wider thing with learning communities across Dunelm, etc. We've now got an agreement, a charter. There's basically an agreement to say, as a leadership group, we are fully supportive of people's personal development. We're going to make sure you get the time. If you don't get the time, come to us and we'll talk about it and we'll figure it out. But also you have the commitment to yourself and within your teams to support each other to make sure that happens as well. So empowering the teams to then decide when are you going to learn, how are you going to learn, having those things. So as an example, we've started this with 1 day a month specifically dedicated to learning. Now that will grow. Some teams do more than that, if they have time to do more than that. But every person in every team gets at least 1 full day a month that's just fully committed to that. But again, you're learning, having opportunities to learn on the job. You know, you're going to learn on the job. So it's making sure that we've got those things in place, making sure we've got psychological safety, you know, making sure that everything's inclusive and diverse in terms of how people learn and develop, but also, you know, giving people the empowerment and ownership to control their own journeys, right? To do that. So this is fairly new for us. This has only been in situ over the last few months. So we're obviously working on this and getting feedback and stuff like that. But it's a good way of kind of getting that, setting up that kind of environment and getting our CIO, etc., to agree into this.
So, as Stu mentioned there, we have the learning charter. So it's one thing getting everybody on board across the organisation and making a start to say this is the commitment that we're going to make to use. The next thing is acknowledging that us as individuals, like we said previously, we're all different, and it's knowing where to start and what direction we want to go in, but acknowledging as well that we're not all heading in the same direction. If you just look back to the tree, we're all going to go on different paths and touch different learning opportunities as well, but it's just how can we work with our people to make sure that their goals are clear, because we can give say Learning and Development Fridays and the time, but what's the point of that if people don't have a purpose? So it's about acknowledging that and sitting down with all of the individuals and putting things in place like e-learning and giving them the opportunity to spend time with these providers with goals in mind that they've set through like the regular one-to-ones and catch-ups that I have on a continuous basis throughout the year to acknowledge what's the next skill that you want to go after, what personally interests you, what do you need to evolve in terms of your skill set to support your team further. And these are just some of the examples of the things that somebody might look towards, but somebody may come in on and need to basically start from the ground up and learn all of the fundamentals, but some people may come in and just need to pick up 1 or 2 as well. But once you acknowledge where people are starting as a base, then you know how to support them as well. So as I mentioned, we've partnered up with Plural Site, we've got A-Cloud Guru and Ministry of Testing, and we still utilise Test Automation University and loads of other e-learning platforms as well. But on top of that, not everybody learns in the same way. Not everybody learns by just sitting in front of one of these e-learning platforms and listening to videos, and you need more exposure. So we've been trying to look at that as well. So in terms of quality coaching and providing one-to-one support, everyone has the opportunity to have a quality coach paired with them to work on their objectives, just so that they're not learning in silos. And we've also created guilds workshops and overview sessions, so it's always good to, if you're doing something great, to have the opportunity to play it back to other people to get feedback, but at the same time share your experience with others as well and take them along that journey. So we created the opportunity for that to happen within Dunelm. The online academy, we basically start building out, start with a Confluence page, loads of different learning resources, and it could be stuff from the e-learning, it could be videos, it could be stuff that you see linked on LinkedIn, or you've read an article in the morning and you find it beneficial for other members in the team. Put it up there. Don't just read it and then move on because somebody else has to go through the discovery to get to that reading material or that learning experience. So it's about having a central place where we can share all of our information to empower each other to continue to grow. And then we have chapter gatherings and meetups. So every quarter we get together in the office, and we support obviously hybrid working as well, where we just focus on people and collaboration, fun activities to bring the teams together to help us grow personally, but also then there is some workshops, we bring in guest speakers as well to just help with that learning experience and get us exposure to things outside of Dunelm as well. So these are just like some of the examples of the things that we're doing to provide opportunities for further learning.
So obviously creating those learning opportunities is great, but if we don't really provide any sort of career journey or career path, you know, then it's kind of like, what am I doing this for? What's my, because everybody wants that career, like everybody wants to develop, understand the direction they can go. And this is kind of how we're structured currently within the quality space. And as I mentioned, we've got 60 members at the moment, a mix of all these different roles, all contributing to that quality engineering vision as a whole. We've got some academy engineers that we've just had join as well from a third party. So that's another route into the team. But this again, it always evolves, right? We don't just base this on giving people career opportunities, we also base it on business need. Where do we need for these roles, what the types of roles we need, what the types of skills we need, looking at the business direction, you know, and you know, we've got platform engineering, data engineering, software engineering, performance engineering. There's a host of different areas that people can develop and build into, but it all comes under that whole quality piece. But then on a much wider scale, we talked about keeping people in your organisation, right, and helping them develop, or getting people from within the organisation that may have the skills. Now this is something that's still a little bit of a work in progress, and I'm not going to take credit for this because our head of business analysis, John Burgess, has been working very hard on this, and we've just basically input into it. But these are all the roles being mapped out in our tech space. And it kind of is a London tube map, essentially, right? There's no circle line in there, I don't think, but it's definitely not Elizabeth line. Apparently the Elizabeth line's amazing. Has anybody been on it? Anyway, sorry, I digress. But yeah, so this is you know, what we're trying to do, but also it really opens up our eyes to say, oh, you know, all these people in these different areas, in these different teams, what are the skills they've got, what could they bring to our team, vice versa, and so on and so on. So it's just mapping it out to start with and then getting down into that detail. So just to summarise then, I think we're just on time. So bringing it all together, so just stepping back through everything that journey that we've been on, we're still on, obviously. So defining that quality engineering vision was our starting point. And then identifying the insights that can help us, and the data that can help us learn and further improve, and so on and so on. Which also ultimately leads on to the understanding the skills that we require. Yeah? And then figuring out, where do we find people? Where are all these people? Where are all these amazing people? We're all sat in here today, but where are all the others? And not limiting our vision around where we can find people, find talent, right? And then build that learning culture, so that everybody feels safe, everybody has the time, the freedom, the empowerment to learn and develop. Creating those learning and development journeys, so really understanding each individual based on those skills required, where are they on that journey, what's their background, you know, where's their real strength, where's their areas of opportunity to grow. And then create those learning communities to try and ensure that we've got inclusive and diverse ways to learn, right? Not everybody learns in the same way. We need to embrace that. We need to make sure everybody's got a way that they can learn and develop, and not leave people behind. And then also creating those career paths off the back of that. So it hasn't been quite as structured as this, I'll be honest. We've been jumping around a lot. Okay, I'm not gonna lie to you. But that's ultimately kind of the journey we've been on over time. And some of these will go back to the skills, because we've made we've adapted, or we've evolved from differently. But it's having this kind of view of how we go about it. And then finally, that helps lead into delivering on your vision that you had at the beginning, right? So often the success side of things is everything that people see, right? The amazing work everybody does, the high quality, customer value that goes out the door, but they don't see all these challenges and things that go beneath that, and these that kind of stuff. Right, laying the foundations is really, really important, and that ultimately helps the organisation, move forward as well, right? So we talk a lot about, to bring it back together, we talk a lot about this whole movement towards quality engineering, but we need to support and help people move, right? Because without people, it ain't going to happen, right? It's not about technology, it's not about tools, because ultimately it comes down to people with those skills, with those mindsets, etc. So hopefully that gives you some insights into what we're doing and how we've done it. And hopefully it might give you some ideas of what you can do and not do, right? Out the back of this today. But are there any questions?
How do you manage your internal knowledge management system? So do you have